Have you ever heard something and instantly hoped you imagined it? You're here with us for real 4chan stories, told by people who found themselves in situations they never expected. What comes next doesn't rely on big scares. It's the slow realization that something isn't right. Get comfortable, turn the lights down, and hit that bell if you want more. Let's begin. The first one came in on a Tuesday in early August, and I didn't think much of her. That's the honest part. When you've been a dermatologist for 11 years, you see a lot of women in their 40s with skin they blame on stress, and you nod, and you write the referral, and you move on. Her name was Denise, late 40s, worked in insurance somewhere off Woodward. She had firm little nodules along both cheekbones, symmetric, about the size of peppercorns, 2 on the left, 2 on the right. Skin over them was a dull pinkish brown, the color of a bruise trying to become something else. I asked her the usual questions: new products, new medications, allergies. She said no to everything. When I asked if she'd had any cosmetic work done, she went quiet for a second, then said no, just a facial once in a while. The biopsy came back as foreign body granuloma, reaction to injected material the lab couldn't fully identify. I asked her again, gently, if she was sure nothing had been injected into her face. She said she was sure. I noted it and started her on steroids. Second one, 2 weeks later. Different woman, mid-50s. Name was Angela. Same office building off Woodward, different company. Coincidence, I figured. Angela had the same nodules, cheekbones, symmetric, same pinkish discoloration. When I told her the previous biopsy had shown foreign material, she blinked twice and said, "Huh." Then she said, "So a facial can do that?" I told her a facial couldn't do that. A facial stays on the surface. This was under the dermis. She looked at her hands. She said she'd been going to a place on the east side near Grosse Pointe, some woman a friend had recommended. She didn't remember the name, just knew it was in a strip mall behind a nail place. They did skin treatments. She thought it was creams. I asked her if anything had gone under the skin. She said, "Not really, just little pricks, like acupuncture." I sat there a moment, pen hovering. Then I wrote that down. Third came a week after Angela. Woman named Priya, 38, worked from home. Same nodules, this time along the jawline too. I asked her up front, any injections, any fillers, anywhere off the books? She looked embarrassed. She said her sister-in-law had told her about a place that did natural sculpting. No needles from a doctor, just a technician. Priya said the tech had been very professional. Wore gloves, had a proper table. I asked where. She said she didn't remember the address, just knew it was East Side, behind a nail place, in a strip mall. The tech was a woman named Rita, or Rena, something like that. That's when the back of my neck got cold. Not right away. It took a beat. I finished the appointment, wrote up the notes, sent the biopsy. Same result. I told my partner at the practice about it that evening. He shrugged. He said unlicensed injectors are a real problem in this city. Always have been. And we should just report it to the state. I nodded. I meant to. I didn't yet. 3 women in a month with a similar complication is unusual, but not impossible. Detroit has neighborhoods where certain services get shared through word of mouth. I told him I'd think about it. 4th patient came the following week. She was maybe 50. Her name was Yolanda. She came in on a Thursday afternoon, and the moment she turned her face toward the exam light, I felt something shift in my chest. Same nodules, same locations, but there was also a small patch along her left cheek where the tissue looked wrong, dusky. The color of old meat. Necrosis is not something you want to see on a face. I asked, very carefully, if she'd had anything done. She said yes right away. Her cousin's friend ran a beauty studio out on the east side, in a strip mall near the water. Youth treatments. No needles from a doctor. Just a technician. Very kind, Yolanda said. Never rushed. I asked what the technician injected. Yolanda said she didn't know exactly. Something the woman mixed in the back. She'd been told it was plant-based, and she had wanted to believe that. I stopped writing. 4 women, same building, same procedure, same complication. I put her on antibiotics and steroids and told her she'd need a plastic surgeon for the necrotic patch. I told her, as gently as I could, that whatever was under her skin was not plant-based. She cried a little. She said she'd suspected. The studio had been fine for the first few visits, And then this last time, her cheek had started to hurt 3 days after, and she'd called and no one had picked up. I asked her the address. She said she didn't remember, just knew the turn off Jefferson, behind a nail place. That was the fourth, behind a nail place. I went home that night and couldn't eat. My husband asked what was wrong, and I told him I'd stumbled onto something and didn't know what to do about it. He said, report it, like it was easy. The thing is, I didn't have an address. I had a description. I had a pattern. I had biopsy results. And I had 4 women who trusted a woman they thought was helping them. 5th patient came the last week of August. Woman named Corinne, early 60s. She'd had it done twice. Both cheekbones, both nasolabials. The nodules were worse on her because the material had been layered. 2 separate rounds of whatever it was, resting on top of each other under her skin. She told me the name of the technician right away. Not Rita. Rena. Rena was very sweet, she said. Had a daughter in college. Used to be a nail tech herself before she learned the injections from a friend. I asked Corinne if she could give me the address. She said she'd bring it in on her follow-up. She had it saved in her texts. She wanted to help. She said she felt stupid, and I told her not to. These places prey on the fact that we can't afford a real dermatologist for cosmetic work, or that we can, and we still want the shortcut. It's not stupid, it's just human. 6th came 3 days after Corinne. I didn't need to examine her before I saw the nodules. She was in the waiting room with a scarf pulled up over her jaw. Name was Deb, 52. Referred by her primary. She told me, before I asked, that she'd been to a woman on the east side who did injections in a strip mall, behind a nail place. She'd been the 3rd of her friends to go. The first 2 had loved it. She said her friends' names, and I recognized one of them. It was Denise. That was the moment I understood I wasn't watching a series of individual mistakes. I was watching a network, a referral tree. Denise had told a friend who had told a friend, and the woman named Rena had been busy for months, maybe longer, tucking whatever she was tucking under the faces of women who trusted each other more than they trusted the medical system. Corinne brought me the address on her follow-up. I copied it into my phone. I sat with it for a day. The 7th patient came the 2nd week of September. Her name was Marie. Maybe 32. She'd only been once. The nodules were small, just starting. If she stopped now, most of it could be managed. She started crying and told me she'd been about to book another round. I asked her directly. I said, "Where did you go? I need the address." She gave it to me without hesitating. Same address Corinne had sent. A unit in a strip mall off Jefferson, East Side, behind a nail salon and a check cashing place. Suite B. I wrote the report that night. Every case. Biopsy results, patient statements with their permission, dates, description of the location. I sent it to the State Medical Inspection Office and to the licensing board. I called the complaints line the next morning and read the summary over the phone. The woman on the other end asked me to email a copy. I did. It took about 6 weeks for anything visible to happen. In late October, an investigator called with follow-up questions. He asked if any of the patients would speak on the record. 5 said yes. 2 didn't want their names attached, and he said that was fine. The studio was closed by mid-November. Rena, whose real name turned out to be different, was charged with unlicensed medical practice and a couple of related counts I didn't fully follow. The materials found in the back room, according to a line in the news article, were industrial-grade silicone and unlabeled compounds not approved for human use. All 7 of my patients are being treated. Some will need surgery. Yolanda's necrotic patch healed, mostly, though the skin there will never look right. Corinne's nodules are shrinking. Marie caught it early enough that she'll probably be fine. What still bothers me is how long it took me to see it. 3 patients in and I was still calling it coincidence. 4 in and I was going home to think about it instead of picking up the phone. The signals were there from the first biopsy. I just didn't want to be the one to make the call. Because making the call meant admitting how easy it had been for one woman in a back room behind a nail salon to become the trusted address for strangers who then trusted each other. The thing I keep coming back to is Denise. When I asked her if she'd had anything done, she said no. She lied to me. Not because she was hiding something bad. Because she was embarrassed. If she'd told me the truth in early August, I might have made the call 2 months earlier. 6 women might never have walked into that suite. I don't blame her. I just think about it. The job was 6 months old before I wrote the first date down at the back of my logbook, and by then I'd already missed 3 of them. I was the overnight guy at a pharmaceutical distribution warehouse off Route 30, out past Coatesville. Big, flat building, gray siding, the kind of place you drive past 100 times without registering it. There was a smaller office wing on the north side, and then just the warehouse floor, maybe the size of 2 football fields. Racking up to the ceiling, forklift lanes, temperature-controlled rooms in the back for the stuff that needed to stay cold. My shift was 10 to 6, 5 nights a week, and for most of that shift I sat in a little booth by the main gate with a monitor showing 16 camera feeds and a coffee that always went cold by 2. I got the job in June 2022. By late fall I had my routine down. Walk the perimeter at 11, sit. Walk the interior at 1, sit. Walk again at 4. Sit until relief showed up at 6 with an energy drink and a bad mood. The place was dead. That was the whole appeal. After the last job I had, working retail security at a mall in King of Prussia, dead sounded like a raise. The first time I actually saw the van, I thought I was about to get fired. It was a Tuesday in July, around 3 in the morning, and I was doing my 1 o'clock loop late because I'd nodded off. I came around the north side of the building, and there were headlights on the loading dock. A white cargo van, backed up to Bay 4, taillights lit. I froze behind a stack of pallets and grabbed my radio. Then I saw the gate. The gate was open. Nobody had buzzed me. Nobody had called ahead. And the gate needed a code. I walked up slow, hand on my flashlight but not turning it on. And by the time I got close enough to see faces, 2 guys in gray coveralls were already carrying a plastic crate up the ramp into the van. They didn't look at me, didn't stop. A third guy was standing by the driver's door with a clipboard. And when he saw me, he just raised a hand, kind of a lazy wave, and said, "You the new one?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Ray should have told you. Scheduled pull. We're on the board." Then he walked me over to the side door and punched in the code on the keypad. Light went green. First try. That week's code. The one that had rotated on Sunday night. 6 digits. He didn't hesitate on a single one. Back in the booth, I checked the logbook. There it was, in the previous guard's handwriting from 4 weeks earlier. 0300. Planned shipment. Bay 4. Cleared. Same thing 4 weeks before that, and 4 before that. Once a month, always a Tuesday, always around 3, always cleared. I felt stupid for panicking. I signed off on it, wrote 0312, planned shipment, Bay 4, cleared, and went back to my crossword. That should have been the end of it. The reason it wasn't is that I got bored around September and started chatting up the day people. There was a guy in logistics named Wes who came in early sometimes, before 6, to prep loads for the first drivers. Nice guy, big Eagles fan. He'd bring me a real coffee if he saw my truck still in the lot. We'd stand by the dock and complain about the Cowboys. And one morning I mentioned, offhand, that the overnight pulls always ran clean, and I appreciated whoever set the schedule because they never overlapped my walk. He said, "The what?" I said, "The monthly overnight. Bay 4, the 3 a.m. guys." He looked at me like I'd started speaking German. Then he laughed and said, "Man, we don't run anything overnight. First truck rolls at 6. If somebody was pulling stock at 3, I'd know about it, because I'd be the one taking the ass chewing when the count came up short in the morning." I said, "It's on the board. Ray signs it off." He shrugged. He said, "Then it's a Ray thing. I don't touch Ray things." The way he said it wasn't a joke. He said it fast and looked at the ground and changed the subject to whether Hertz was going to hold up through the playoffs. I let it go. But that night I went back through the logbook. 9 entries, going back to before I was hired. Every one written in a different hand, because we rotated guards, but the wording was almost identical every time. Planned shipment, Bay 4, cleared. No manifest number, no driver name, no truck number, just cleared. I went to the shared drive on the office computer and pulled up the shipping schedule for the previous 6 months. Every scheduled pickup was logged with a carrier, a PO number, and a driver ID. Every single one. Except on the nights the van came, there was nothing. Not canceled, not internal, nothing. The 3 a.m. slot didn't exist on paper, anywhere except in our little handwritten book in the booth. Now, I'm not a paranoid guy. I did 4 years in the Army, and I've worked security in enough places to know that half of what looks weird is just some manager cutting a corner he's not supposed to cut. Somebody's cousin gets a side gig. Somebody's moving product for a smaller vendor and doesn't want to pay the surcharge. I figured it was something like that. Dumb, but boring. I decided I'd just watch the next one. October came. I was ready. I'd started carrying my personal phone in my chest pocket instead of leaving it on the desk. On the night of the pull, I stayed off the north side of the building until I heard the gate motor. Then I walked around the office wing and came at the dock from the far side, staying low behind the trash compactor. Same van, same coveralls, or coveralls close enough. Different clipboard guy this time, older, gray at the temples, calm, the way people are calm when they've done a thing 100 times. I counted crates, 14, not big ones. About the size of a case of wine, plastic, black, with a little handle molded into the top, and no labels I could see from 30 feet away. They moved fast, 12 minutes from the van pulling up to the gate closing behind it. Before it pulled out, I took 2 pictures through the slats of the compactor. Both came out grainy, but the van was in frame. No plates, not obscured, not muddy. There was no plate bracket at all on the back. I checked the front on the way out and it was the same. The badge on the grille said Ford. White paint, no company logo, no stickers, no rear windows. I wrote down what I could. Transit, probably 2018 to 2020 body style. Small dent above the passenger side wheel well. I sat with all that for 2 weeks. The thing that got me wasn't the van. It was the codes. I'd been in that booth long enough to know how the code rotation worked. Sunday nights, right after midnight, the system pushed a new 6-digit code to the keypads. We got ours on a printed slip in a sealed envelope, handed off by the outgoing guard. There were maybe 8 people in the whole building who knew the current code at any given time. Guards, Ray, and 2 or 3 people upstairs. And the code was different every week. Whoever these guys were, they had the current one. Not last month's, not a master, that week's. I brought it to Ray on a Thursday morning. I'd waited around after my shift so I could catch him coming in. I brought the photos on my phone, the dates, my notes about the plates. I laid it all out on his desk and kept my voice flat, no accusations, just, here's what I'm seeing, thought you'd want to know. Ray listened. He didn't touch the phone. He looked at me the whole time, and when I was done, he leaned back in his chair and let out a breath through his nose. He said, "You're a sharp guy." I said, "Thanks." He said, "This isn't at your pay grade. Let it go." That was the whole conversation. He didn't ask for the photos. He didn't tell me I was wrong. He just told me it wasn't at my level. I put my 2 weeks in the next morning. I told him it was family stuff back home in Ohio. He said he understood. He shook my hand and said if I ever needed a reference to call him, and he sounded like he meant it, which somehow was the worst part of the whole thing. My last shift was December 19th, 2022. It was quiet. No van that week, and I'd expected that, because the pattern put the next one on the 27th. I walked the perimeter at 11, sat, walked at 1, sat, walked at 4, handed off to the morning guy, drove home in the dark with my windows cracked because I wanted the cold air on my face. Over the next 3 days, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote everything down. Every date, every time to the minute, every detail I could remember about the crates and the men and the clipboards. 9 visits. I printed 2 copies. I put one in a manila envelope and sealed it with packing tape along the flap. I gave it to Marco, who I've known since middle school and who has never once in his life asked a follow-up question when I've asked him for a favor. I told him not to open it. I told him where to keep it. I told him if something happened to me, or if he didn't hear from me for more than 2 weeks without a good reason, He should open the envelope and do whatever felt right. He said okay. He put it in his gun safe. That was almost a year ago. I still drive past that warehouse sometimes when I visit my sister in Downingtown. The lights are still on all night. There's still a guy in the booth. I don't slow down. The way I found it wasn't dramatic. That's what still gets me, honestly. It was just a Sunday night in October, and I was running the kind of maintenance window we run every quarter. Portland was doing that thing where the rain never really lands. It just hangs in the air and makes the parking lot lights look fuzzy. I was in the office because I hate patching Exchange over VPN. Something about pushing updates from my kitchen table makes me nervous. Our building is on the east side, off Sandy, one of those 2-floor tech-adjacent places with an escape room on the ground floor and us upstairs. 52 employees. I'm the whole IT department. Everyone calls me by my first initial because they can't be bothered with the rest of it. The plan for that night was small. Push the security update, verify mail flow, spot check the audit logs, go home by midnight. I brought a burrito from the place on 28th and a can of yerba mate. Fluorescence on half power. HVAC ticking. Nobody in the building except me and the cleaning guy who waves at me every Sunday and never says a word. I got through the patch clean. When I pulled up the message trace to verify, I was just eyeballing it. You develop a rhythm after a while. You know what normal traffic looks like for your company. Marketing sends huge attachments on Fridays. Finance emails itself CSV files at 2 a.m. on the 1st of the month. Our CEO forwards LinkedIn posts to himself like they're going to change his life. That's when I noticed a weird pattern in the outbound. A little cluster of messages, all going to the same external address, all showing up as auto forwards. Not spam, not a phishing exfil, just quiet, boring copies of internal emails kicked out to a Gmail address I didn't recognize. I checked the transport rule side first, nothing at the org level, so it had to be a client-side rule on someone's mailbox. Fine, that happens. People set up forwarding to their personal accounts because they want to work from their phone or whatever, and I have to remind them it's against policy and disable it. Annoying but routine. I ran the query to find the source mailbox. It came back to one account. I'll call him Ellis. He'd been with us 3 years, worked in accounts payable. The guy who brought donuts on Fridays and knew everybody's kid's name. Perfectly fine. Perfectly forgettable, in a good way. I'd sat next to him at the holiday lunch the year before, and we'd talked about his hiking trip. So I opened the rule, just to see what it was doing, before I turned it off and sent him the usual reminder email. The rule was specific. It didn't forward everything from his inbox. It didn't forward anything from him at all. It forwarded a copy of every message where the sender was one of 3 specific people to that external Gmail. 3 internal senders, hard-coded by address. I read the names twice. Then I sat back in my chair. The 3 senders were all women who worked in the building. Priya, from marketing, Anna, from ops, and a woman on the design side everybody called Jess. Priya sat 2 desks down from Ellis. Anna was in a different pod, but she'd been on his project team over the summer. Jess, I honestly didn't know that well. She'd started maybe 8 months back. I stared at the rule properties for a while. It had been created 6 months ago, to the day, almost. Exactly 6 months. It hadn't been touched since. It just sat there, quietly copying emails. I want to say I felt something dramatic at that moment, but I didn't. I felt slow. My hands went a little cold, and my ears got hot, and I remember thinking about the burrito wrapper on my desk, and being annoyed I hadn't thrown it away. I checked the destination address. Gmail. First name plus a string of numbers. The kind of handle you make when you don't care. I ran it through a couple of the free lookup tools we use for phishing triage. The account had been registered 8 days earlier. That part didn't fit at first. If the rule was 6 months old, why was the destination only a week old? Then I understood. He'd been rotating. Or the previous one had gotten flagged, or full. Or he'd just gotten paranoid and made a new one. Which meant somewhere out there were older accounts too, full of 6 months of these women's emails, calendar invites, complaints about their bosses, notes about their doctor appointments. I looked at the message trace again. There were hundreds of forwarded messages. Some were normal work stuff. Some were the kinds of internal things people write when they think only a few people are reading. Priya had emailed HR twice about a schedule accommodation. Anna had traded messages with a friend in the company about a difficult family thing. Jess had sent a coworker a photo of her cat because she was having a rough day. All of it copied. All of it sitting in a Gmail account I couldn't see into. The rest of that Sunday, I sat with it. I got up to throw the burrito wrapper away, and I realized I was walking softly, like there was someone else in the building. There wasn't. I checked. I actually got up and walked the floor, which is not a thing I have ever done before, on a night when I was alone with a locked door and a badge system. That's what the rule did to me, and I hadn't even worked in the same room as him yet. I thought about Ellis at the holiday lunch. He'd been sitting across from Priya. He'd made her laugh at something. I remembered that specifically because I'd thought at the time, oh, that's nice, he's good with people. I thought about calling him. That was the first stupid instinct. Just call and say, hey, delete this thing, we need to talk. I actually had my phone in my hand for a second. Then it hit me that if I did that, he'd have time to log in from home and clear whatever else was on his end. Delete the sent items on the destination account, cover his tracks. And any story he wanted to tell later, he'd have time to build. So I didn't call. I did what I should have done, which sounds obvious now, but at the time felt like it took a lot of effort. I exported the rule. I exported the message trace, 6 months back, all destinations, all timestamps. I pulled the sign-in logs for his account and saved those too. I put everything on the encrypted share that only I and the CFO could see. I made a copy on a locked USB and put it in the small safe in my office that most people don't know is there. Then I deleted the forwarding rule. Not disabled, deleted. And I revoked his active sessions so his phone would kick him out of email and he'd assume it was a normal token refresh. I went home around 2 a.m. I did not sleep. Monday morning, I did not go to my desk. I went straight to HR. I did not stop and say hi to anyone. Priya waved at me in the hallway, and I gave her a normal wave back, and I felt like a liar for it, because I'd read her emails, even accidentally, in the process of confirming what the rule did. That part still sits weird on me. I told the head of HR I needed a closed-door meeting, and I needed legal on the phone, and I needed it before anyone opened their laptop. She looked at me for about 2 seconds, and then she made it happen. That's the thing about her. She doesn't ask why first, she asks why later. I walked them through the export, the timeline, the destination account, and how new it was. I told them I'd already preserved the logs, and that nobody but me and now them had seen any of it. Legal took over from there. They told me not to speak to Ellis, not to speak to Priya, Anna, or Jess, not to speak to anyone. Go back to my desk, do my job, act normal. Acting normal was the hardest part. He came by my desk on Wednesday, wanted to know if the mail server had been acting slow, said his phone had signed him out the other day. I said yeah, the update had been messier than expected. We were still cleaning up. He nodded. He said, thanks, man. He tapped my desk twice with his knuckles, that little thing he always did, and he walked away. On Thursday, I passed him in the kitchen. He was rinsing a mug. He asked if I'd seen the game. I said no, I don't follow it. He said, fair enough. He rinsed the mug and walked out, and I stood there staring at the sink because I was picturing him at his desk on some regular afternoon 6 months ago, opening Outlook, clicking through the wizard, typing in 3 names. They let him work the rest of the week. I don't know exactly what legal was doing behind the scenes. I know they pulled his laptop image on Friday under some pretense about a hardware refresh, and I know outside counsel was involved by then. The following Tuesday, he was walked out. Quiet, no announcement. His chair was empty, and by Thursday, somebody had already put a plant on his desk without asking. HR spoke to the 3 women individually. I wasn't in those meetings, and I don't want to know the details. What I heard afterward, only because the head of HR told me herself so I'd understand what I'd stopped, was that 2 of them said the same thing. They'd noticed. Little things. He always seemed to be near the coffee machine when they were. He knew what one of them had worn to an event he hadn't been invited to. Once, he'd mentioned a restaurant one of them had gone to on a weekend, and then acted like he'd guessed. They hadn't said anything because there was nothing to say, nothing you could put in an email. That's the part that sits with me, not the rule itself, not the 8-day-old Gmail account, not even the 6 months. It's that two of them already knew, in the way you know something without knowing it, and they'd been carrying it around by themselves. And the only reason it stopped was that on a slow Sunday in October, I happened to look at the right line in a log I look at almost every week. Jess emailed me a couple of weeks later, not about the situation, just about a printer thing. At the end she wrote, "Thanks for everything, sincerely." That's all. I read it 3 times and I closed my laptop for a while. I still run the same maintenance windows. I check the forwarding rules a lot more carefully now. Well guys, that's the end of today's video. Let me know what you thought, good or bad, and don't forget to subscribe if this is your kind of content. We're looking at stories pulled from 4chan, but sometimes they don't feel as distant as they should. One small detail can make the whole thing feel real. I'll see you in the next one.